Good morning, good morning. Welcome to our Talks to Anthony. Today we're going to have a insightful conversation. For those that are new to the channel, we make mental health conversation content that's going to be beneficial to your personal development in addition to your well-being, right? But in today's conversation, we're going to be talking about you can still be grateful and still be depressed, right? So I really want to take in consideration that just because we have things and everything looks good on the exterior, you know what I mean? People see the things that we have, right? I mean, doesn't, you know what I mean that we don't have those feelings, doesn't mean that we ain't down bad, doesn't mean that, you know what I mean? Like, there's still emotions that are tied to just because you have, the exterior on point, right? So you can still appreciate life and still struggle, and that is totally fine, right? So I really want us to kind of normalize that, right? So first key point off rip is going to be many people feel guilty for struggling, right? When they have things or even something to be grateful for. Depression is often misunderstood as negativity or a lack of appreciation, right? So emotional pain and gratitude can exist at the same time. So like I said, some people can have things, some people could be grateful for them, some people can, like really be blessed, right? But at the same time too, they can also have emotional pain that's tied to these things, right? Inheritance, right? They also too, I want to say something, right? What about those people that are in situations where parents are doing phenomenal work. They're in the community, popular, right? They may be, the mother may even be like a photographer, something like that. Dad may even be doing like, a lawyer or something. Who knows? But like, let's say they're just in a prestigious role, right? What about the kids? Because if mom and dad over there are always, working hard, always in the community, always doing work, right? What about the kids' emotional needs, right? So I really want us to take consideration because everybody's dynamic is going to be different, right? But I really want us to make the connection because, like I said, someone can really have these things, really be grateful, really be blessed, right? But at the same time, too, they could have been emotionally neglected. Right, so depression is often, like I said, misunderstood as a negative or a lack of that appreciation. And acknowledging suffering does not erase appreciation for what is good, right? So it's just, like I said, we want to be able to kind of, like I said, have that compassion and understanding, like I said, for people's emotions and what they got going on behind the scenes. When it comes to psychoeducation, depression affects our mood, our energy, motivation, and our nervous system in regards to functioning, right? So like I said, when you see somebody that is just kind of closed off and, you don't know what they got going on. That's why it's really important not to judge somebody. You don't know what someone's got going on. And like I said, depression affects everybody and looks differently for everybody. So it's very important, like I said, have a compassionate mindset, a positive mindset when you're engaging with people. Like I said, really just kind of just being emotionally, work on emotional intelligence to kind of have that understanding when it comes to people, right? But moving forward, it does not always, caused by external circumstances of other people, what other things look like. Like I said, things could derive from an individual themselves, right? So someone can love their family, value their life, and still emotionally feel numb or exhausted. Every situation, like I said, is going to be different to person to person. But gratitude practices can support mental health, but they're not the cure for depression, right? So, some people can just say, you're down bad, you have good things, you need to be grateful, right? Look at your parents, they did all these good things for you. Look where you live, all the. You feel me? That's not going to be the cure of just, fixing the actual problem. Like I said, there's emotions, there's real things that have been going on, and it could have been going on for, like I said, it could be months, it could have been years of pain, years of neglect, years of crying out, years of trying to have conversations, years of trying to implement change, you feel me? Like, everybody's situation, the family dynamic is different, and I really want us to take this in consideration because depression is significant, right? And we're not going to sit there and undermine someone's emotions and, like I said, years of pain, right? So mental health struggles are not a proof that someone is ungrateful, right? It's just this is something that someone is feeling. This is a statement. This is real emotion here. So we're not going to sit here, like I said, neglect someone's emotions. We need to be able to take this into consideration because, like I said, once again, years of pain. Moving forward in regards to practical reframing, how we're able to look at things with a more compassionate perspective, because, like I said, when we're dealing with trauma, we're dealing with pain, we're dealing with, uncomfortable conversations, we got to be able to have a more compassionate mindset because only you know what you went through. Only you know what you experienced. Only you know those feelings, right? When you was crying out, when you was trying to seek that support and no one was, there for you, right? You had to walk that. And that's what makes you resilient. That's why I'm saying mental health is really important. And you're the example of mental health because you're still here today and you're seeking that information, right? So let's move on. So stop treating gratitude like a requirement for emotional, to seek that validation, right? Allow complex emotions. Like I said, everybody's emotions are going to be different, right? To coexist instead of, forcing positivity, right? So, just allow yourself to kind of just, feel what you're feeling, right? So I know people out here, they push positivity. I mean, like because positivity works, right? It's going to help your situation, right? But at the same time too, when you force something, you kind of run away from it because it's like it feels forced, right? Unless you're in a situation where you allow things to kind of feel more gradual, right? You're really kind of in that state of mind to really allow the soothing state to kind of, go upon you, so you're able to embrace that, right? But like I said, you got to feel your emotion first, right? Whether it's anger, whether it's just your sadness, whatever you feel me, like feel whatever you feel, and then be able to embrace the positivity to be able to improve the situation, right? But like I said, when things are usually forced, usually don't be working, right? So healing begins when people can be honest first, like I said, taking that accountability, which is, like I said, usually difficult, right? Without that shame, right? So really using, like I said, compassion, have some understanding with yourself, be gentle to yourself, be kind to yourself, right? You're able to implement and be kind to other people, but when it comes to yourself, you know what I mean? Like, this is something that we need to be able to practice and work on, right? So you can also, like I said, you can be thankful, you can be honest, you can be compassionate, right? You got to be authentic to yourself, right? You got to sit with yourself, right? And you can do this, like I said, with that support as well, right? Like I said, struggling is something that, we can have a negative mindset to it, but like I said, it's doing something in a real way. It's helping us. We're doing the real work. It's training us. It's helping us improve, right? And by addressing something in the beginning, it's usually going to be uncomfortable, right? But we have to be able to, implement these things to become comfortable amongst our condition, right? This is going to be able to help us for the long run, right? So I really want us to take that in consideration once again with compassion. Micro action, because when we know better, we tend to do better, right? So practice replacing, like I said, the self-judgment, that negative self-talk with positive self-talk and that self-honesty, right? So when you're more kind to yourself, when you're honest to yourself, it really does make the difference, right? That vulnerability, right? Get uncomfortable. Try to just, speak your piece, really embrace, your voice, really, like that autonomy that you may have been shut down. You feel like, only you know your situation in regards to your emotions that were happening for years, etc. Right? So I really want you guys, like I said, find your voice and autonomy and really start to talk your talk. And if you don't feel comfortable talking and really kind of, another strategy right here is journaling. Right? This is going to help you with that self-awareness, really kind of building some context with yourself, building that rapport, right? So try your best to kind of just, be honest with yourself and confront some of these uncomfortable emotions. So instead of saying that I shouldn't feel this way, try to be able to embrace, like I said, with a positive mindset. This is real, even if it looks okay from the outside. Like I said, people have their own judgment, how they can perceive you, but you know yourself, right? So reach out to someone instead of minimizing your experiences. Like I said, proactive support. Trust is hard to build out here. That's why I'm always advocating for a counselor, a therapist, someone that you're able to sit down with, whether it's virtual, or whether you're in person, and be able to have proactive conversations in a conducive environment where it's a safe space, right? Whatever happens in the room stays in the room, right? So you can really be able to build with a professional that can be able to really assess your situation, can really be beneficial for you for the long run, right? A reminder I really want us to be able to apply in our lives is that you do not have to invalidate your pain, right? Or suppress your pain, or, I deserve this should have happened to me, like, no. You need to be able to appreciate your life. You can appreciate your life. You can have gratitude. You can love your life. You can have a positive mindset, right? But you really got to be able to, like I said, validate your emotions, validate your feelings, because you do matter, right? Moving forward, in regards to wrapping this video up, I really want us to take into consideration, like I said, two things that I really want us to, notice and that are true is that we can struggle and we also can, like I said, have gratitude as well, right? And just because we have nice things, we're groomed in a nice environment, right? We are blessed, right? And we are fortunate, right? We also can be going through our unique struggles as well, right? So no one knows you more than yourself. No one can criticize you and say you this, that, you're ungrateful, etc., etc. Don't let these words to kind of put you in a shameful state. And you don't deserve that. You have your emotions, you have your feelings, you have your mindset, you have a wellness, you have a well-being, right? You matter. So I really want you to take in consideration, do the things and implement some of the things that we were able to talk, about today. Seek the support, right? Therapy is here for you, and having blessings doesn't automatically remove, like I said, that emotional pain. I want you guys to know that, like I said, you matter. If you find this video beneficial, give it a thumbs up, share if possible. See you on the next one. Stay blessed.